Hello, YouTube, and welcome to a State of the Games report for Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen July 2015. It's been a couple of months since I've done one of these videos. So let's get started here with Star Citizen. So one of the major reasons I haven't done one of these State of the Games videos in a couple of months is Star Citizen, frankly, didn't release much there for 2-3 months. It hasn't been until July that they finally released an update for Arena Commander, as it was originally supposed to be tied in with an update or the release of the Star Marine first-person shooter module, which has had some technical issues and has been continuously delayed and remains delayed as of the making of this video. In fact, I don't really expect to see the first-person shooter Star Marine module to be in our hands anytime relatively soon. Trademark. As of the recording of this video late in July 2015, I wouldn't surprise me if we don't see it before the fourth quarter of 2015, to be 100% honest. With that being said, I can say that 1.1.5 has been the most substantial update in a year, and frankly, whenever I thought Star Citizen pledging 2 years ago, and my expectations for the initial version point 8 of how the ships would fly in Arena Commander was this. For the first time, Arena Commander actually feels like I'm flying a spaceship that has some mass and inertia and momentum that has to be overcome, instead of flying a hamster ball in space that can go in any direction at any time almost instantaneously. As a result, there is a much more emphasis on flying and thinking about what maneuvers you want to pull off and being mindful of your surroundings when it comes to asteroids and things like that, than it is necessarily always aiming and aiming and aiming and aiming all of the time. That being said, I mean, it still highlights some balance control issues and some other things that need to be worked on, but I am much more tolerant of those as I was the fact that we had a fundamentally broken design concept when it came to what a space sim should be and what was being delivered and iterated upon for basically a year. And what I mean by that is with version 0.8, 0.9, 1.0, 1.1, things kept going down more of a freelancer path when we were told Wing Commander style game, not freelancer style game. And yet, freelancer is what many of us, including myself, kept seeing time and time again. This is the first patch that it actually feels like the game is headed in the right direction in terms of how spaceships on the internet should actually fly. And I really can't say too many bad things about it. You know, yes, certain weapons are going to be overpowered and things like that at this stage of development. Maybe we should have been a little bit further along towards some of those goals, but I don't really mind it. Weapons are always going to be balanced one way or the other, nerfed, strengthened, re-nerfed, however, so on and so forth, etc. Time, time after time, it's all been here before, it'll all happen again. And I expect that. I don't really have a problem with, CS missiles being overpowered in this release and then completely nerfed in the next one, and then Mantis versus Amansky Commander. All that stuff is going to happen. The next thing that I really hope that they put an emphasis on trying to get right is aim and flight with joysticks. They're trying to do this, gimbals don't have as much firepower, fixed weapons have more firepower as a balance, but still, there's just some fundamental problems with aiming with a joystick, and how much they don't want to admit it. They know they have to overhaul ESP, and I'm really going to wait for them to do that before really passing too much judgment. But ultimately, I am rather skeptical that, fixed damage is really going to balance things out for joystick users versus pixel perfect aiming for mouse users. Take away pixel perfect aiming. I mean, you don't have to take away their ability to aim, but add recoil spray to gimbaled or turreted weapons controlled by a mouse, or add auto aim to the joystick or for joystick and gamepad users. Either of those solutions would fundamentally fix it, or, again, take away manual precision aim and just put a cone that you have to get, the target within, and your weapons will automatically lock on. I know a lot of people don't like to do that for various reasons. I think the primary reason being is that's how Elite Dangerous does it, but it works. I'm not really going to sit here and dispel to say that just because Elite does it, it shouldn't be done in Star Citizen, not over the fact that it does work. So that's basically kind of my review of Star Citizen at the end of July 2015. Again, hopefully we're now pointed down the right path. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, or at least the kind of the fuzzy, blurry outlines of a light at the end of the tunnel. And it'll be interesting to see where things now go over the next 2 or 3 years. That's not to say that CIG isn't going to have some other issues to overcome between now and then. I know funding, for a variety of reasons, seems to be down over the past couple of months rather substantially. And anybody who studies economic and product life cycles and things like that, yeah, that's to be expected. At some point, they're going to reach market saturation. Basically, anybody willing to pledge at the early access stage of the game has pledged, and those who have already pledged have bought all the ships that they're willing to buy. Unless you give them a dramatic reason to, they're more likely to melt existing purchases to acquire a new purchase rather than, slapping out their Amex. So those are all, potential hurdles down the line that CIG will have to address, but I at least now feel that Star Citizen is headed more or less in the right direction, which is something that I couldn't say a year ago, or really much up until this point. So onward to Elite Dangerous, which hasn't been idle. They released version 1.3 back in May, dubbed Power Play. In this version, we saw an overhaul of mining with the introduction of prospector and collection drones for cargo as well as mining chunks, which I think makes mining a little bit less tedious, a little bit more profitable at the entry-level stages of the game. I do believe there still becomes a point where it's certainly not an in-game occupation in terms of what you can really earn. Moreover, the problem with mining is the fact that it really serves no purpose. If you don't go out and mine ores, NPCs in the background sim will do it for you. And I think that's probably my biggest problem with Elite Dangerous right now, to this day, is that the economy seems to be stagnant and player input has very little effect on the output. Now, Power Play was an attempt to start to address this with the introduction of NPC sub-factions to the major powers. You can pledge for an Imperial Center and then take on missions that will eventually earn you a wage and special weapons and maybe eventually ships and other special equipment like that too, as well as affect their status and control of star systems. You can expand your guys' territory or take missions to undermine a rival. Now, I don't think all of these systems have worked quite as intended, and actually I think has bred more hostility in the community, because it's simply kind of like pouring sand on a scale to achieve these balances. If you want to go undermine a faction, just go into solo play, go kill a bunch of NPCs, and there's nothing the other side can do to stop you. Except for take on other missions, and they could do this in solo mode too, and then it just becomes a contest to see who can dump the most sand into their side of the scale, and then at the end of the turn, he with the most sand in their scale, eventually wins or loses. So I don't think that that's exactly what people were expecting, but I will say this much about Frontier. It may take them a little bit of time, but generally speaking, they will address issues that their game has. Whether it be peer-to-peer networking, you may not always like their answers that they give you, but they will give you an answer. The answer on the peer-to-peer networking and the cheating and stuff like that was, we're aware of the problem, we're trying to implement steps to prevent players from logging off or combat logging, essentially, or cheating. On the cheating aspect, they're like, we're not going to go into details, I understand that. You don't want to tell cheaters how you're possibly detecting them so that, you don't always play that cat and mouse game between the cheaters and cheat detection. I understand that, but at least they acknowledge the issue usually relatively quickly. And in fact, a lot of players have been clamoring for the ability to basically create player factions as well as the NPC ones, guilds, corps, organizations, whatever you want to call them, and also be able to have a greater impact on the universe, such as maybe if you go into an uninhabited star system and start mining, that can lead to eventually an outpost being built there, and then eventually maybe a station. But you can start to having meaningful impact. I think if they revised their economy and made it far more dynamic instead of the relatively static, boring place that it has been, where if you bring materials X, Y, and Z, it produces widget 1. If you bring A, B, and C, it produces widget 2. And things like that, where you can have a little bit more impact over the supply chain, as well as some improvements that will be coming, such as the end of power plant sniping. As an Anaconda owner and flyer, hurrah! I'd be love to be able to stick it out in a fight without losing my ship at 90% hull because somebody sniped my power plant. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go. I think I'm going to do a longer video over Elite Dangerous here pretty soon, addressing some more of these issues in more depth. Just like I said last month that Star Citizen had an identity crisis on whether it wanted to be a space flight game versus a space shooter game. I think that Elite Dangerous very much has its own identity crisis, and I'll go more into that in a later video. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.